The labyrinth is a resurrective journey where one travels to the center and returns. It is a path of enlightenment, awareness, rejuvenation, and even rebirth, depending on what the traveler seeks. Depending on the intent of the traveler, the center may represent one's energetic center or psychological center, union, nothingness, the center or beginning of creation, the cosmic womb, the cosmic egg, or even metaphoric death. A journey to the center of a labyrinth and back may symbolize pilgrimage such as to the Holy Land or a similar place. Generally, it is simply a meditative walk, a place where one can lose themselves without being lost. It may result in answers, awareness, or simply peace and connection. The path elicits patience of the traveler as they take the time necessary to reach center. The path allows the traveler to meditate, contemplate, ponder, pray, commune, and prepare to reach center. In the return, the traveler reflects, considers, and opens oneself to whatever truths may be bestowed upon them. The journey is one of openness, where the traveler simply accepts what the labyrinth offers. The oldest images of humanity that exist are rock carvings and petroglyphs. Labyrinths are among those images, making the labyrinth one of the first images ever created by man. Stone carvings of labyrinths are generally reported as occurring around 2000 BC, but I believe that they are much older. Note the two glyphs to the right of this labyrinth, which are plasma formations. Petroglyphs are records of things seen by man, which means that man did not conceive the labyrinth, but rather witnessed and recorded the image. Thus, the symbol came first, and any notions of meaning and purpose came afterward. This is confirmed by the fact that they are the same pattern created by different cultures at different places on Earth. Next to this labyrinth is what is commonly referred to as the stick man, one of the most commonly depicted images in carvings and petroglyphs worldwide. The stick man is a depiction of a plasma burst. What this indicates is that the symbol of the labyrinth came first and that everything ascribed to it came after. Everything we know and understand about the labyrinth came after the creation of the symbol itself. Symbols are manifestations of consciousness and called to be explored and understood by humanity. Compared to other petroglyphs, there is no other image, symbol, or pattern this complex and this specifically consistent. Considering the different cultures that existed where these drawings are found, it is incredible that they are exactly the same in each instance. It is common for cultural and environmental influences to appear in glyphs and drawings, slightly altering how the images appear in different places on Earth. The labyrinth, however, appears exactly the same regardless of culture or region. While the symbol is often accompanied by other images, incredibly, the labyrinth itself is consistent. My theory is that the symbol was first drawn because we saw the pattern being walked in the sky by celestial bodies, which at the time we considered gods. The classic labyrinth pattern was witnessed being traced in the sky, and we traced it in stone, just as we did with all that we saw in the sky at that time. As we always did with gods, we noted their behavior, we did our best to interpret their behavior, and we emulated their behavior. So we drew this pattern, perceived meaning behind the pattern, and as above, so below, we utilized that pattern however we could. Just as we saw the gods in the sky doing, we walked this pattern. To that end, we created walking labyrinths, and there remain many such ancient stone labyrinths.
So, where would you think the highest concentration of ancient labyrinths on the planet is? The answer, perhaps surprisingly, is on a collection of small islands in Russia's White Sea. The Zolovetsky Islands are home to 35 labyrinths dating back to around 3000 BC. The most impressive are on Bolshoi Zayatsky. They are very well preserved, but researchers don't really know what they were for. There are 14 in less than half a square mile. These stone constructions were made by placing boulders onto the ground. The smallest is 20 feet across, while the largest is more than 4 times that at 83 feet in diameter. These boulders form spirals, with the entrances typically being on the south end of the designs. They have, of course, become quite overgrown over time.
As Carl Jung stated, the labyrinth is a primordial symbol. It is a path of enlightenment, awareness, rejuvenation, and even rebirth, depending on the traveler's intention. Reflection and contemplation while walking both the curves and spiral of the labyrinth allow the wisdom of the divine feminine to bathe and enter one's being. Walking the path of the labyrinth is a request for wisdom and clarity, with the willingness and patience to walk and wait as an exchange for what the divine feminine may share. This is a classic labyrinth, the original labyrinth form. With its curves, circular form, and single path, it is feminine in nature. The right angles are a masculine element. In this clip, Freddie Silva states that the labyrinth represents a journey to the underworld and the reconciliation of dark and light forces.
Further along the valley, there is another energy hotspot, marked by an ancient labyrinth, the symbol of the opposing forces of dark and light that must be reconciled before the pilgrim can venture into the other world.
Once a symbol and its archetypal meanings have taken hold in humanity's consciousness, they evolve and their meaning, interpretation, and application expands. This happens both organically and by design, typically by the establishment. Throughout history, symbols have been appropriated by the establishment and altered to hide their true power and serve the need of the establishment. The labyrinth is one of the most powerful feminine symbols to be appropriated and patriarchally transformed. Exploring the power and potential of symbols by adding to them or altering them is not an inherently bad thing. Symbols are tools, and we are meant to use them to access and explore the divine. Though there are many changed and adapted labyrinths, the original images of the labyrinth have always been present, thus the original meaning has also. Humanity is rediscovering the power and value of archetypal symbols, and the labyrinth is primary among these. The resurgence of the labyrinth is part of humanity's rediscovering and raising the divine feminine. The first patriarchal shift of this divine symbol was to turn curves into right angles. This is a common alteration of feminine symbols. While changing the curves to angles does change energy from feminine to masculine, it does not change it from being a labyrinth. Walking the path still takes one in a spiral pattern, which is a feminine element. One could argue that such a labyrinth would simply be seeking from the divine masculine. The second, more prominent change was to create paths that went nowhere, creating a maze where one could get lost. Instead of silencing the mind to receive wisdom, one must now apply thought to the journey. This is a problem-solving exercise. While this may be a different form of gaining wisdom, it is masculine in nature. Figuring out what needs to be done is a polarity of asking for wisdom or guidance. While the maze does serve a purpose, it is masculine rather than feminine. The possibility of being lost can create confusion and fear, which are essential elements of the patriarchal control mechanism. This actually began with the term itself, as labyrinth comes from the Greek word labyrinthos, which does mean maze. A mechanism of appropriation and control is to make terms interchangeable that should not be, thus causing a confusion of meaning or changing meaning altogether. Labyrinth and maze are examples of this. Where once the labyrinth was solely a means to seek wisdom, the term labyrinthian became synonymous with confusion. This is a classic and typical example of patriarchal appropriation. This is not to say that someone made a conscious decision to create this change. This is simply how masculine patriarchal energy functions. In the context of a patriarchal society, one could even consider such changes organic. As described, the labyrinth is an introspective journey comprised of one path that is traveled to the center and back. A labyrinth is not a place where one can become lost or confused. It is not a maze, nor is it maze-like. These are mutually exclusive entities whose terms and meanings should not be interchanged. Even though labyrinthian is typically used to mean maze-like, this is actually a misnomer. In all cultures, the labyrinth has the meaning of an entangling and confusing representation of the world of matriarchal consciousness. This statement from 1964 is an example of the shift of the meaning and purpose of the labyrinth by patriarchal establishment from a one-way path of enlightenment to a structure where confusion is part of the symbol's meaning. Confusion, or the possibility of getting lost, has been an integral part, if not primary part, of the meaning or purpose of a labyrinth for much of human history. Labyrinthian is a common term to mean maze-like, complex navigation, causing confusion, or the likelihood of getting lost. In truth, these are masculine archetypes which have no place in association with a classic labyrinth or feminine symbol. It is common for symbols to evolve and morph over time as they are adopted by different cultures. This statement may have been true for a time, but is not true for all time. In other words, it is true in perception only. Remember, man did not create the labyrinth, but man did create the maze. A truthful aspect of the contemporary meaning of labyrinth is the notion of solution or resolution. A labyrinth walk is a deep cleansing breath for the soul. One walks a classical labyrinth to achieve some type of resolve. It is a solution to some form of negativity, no matter the magnitude. In this way, solving a maze is similar, particularly metaphorically. It is a metaphor for solving the problems of life, and as such, solving a maze correlates to solving a life issue. These statements, in and of themselves, are not misappropriations as such, but rather a reflection of what the term labyrinth came to mean globally. In this statement, Jung actually makes a bit of a distinction between the labyrinth and a maze when he mentions false trails. The resurgence of the labyrinth is helping to correct this perceptive inaccuracy. This is a classic labyrinth, the original labyrinth form, the primordial design gifted to humanity by the gods of the sky. Each layer of the labyrinth path is a circuit. This is a 7-circuit labyrinth. One way a labyrinth can be easily, faithfully recreated is by using a seed pattern. This is a seed pattern for a classic labyrinth. Concentric lines are drawn to connect the seed elements. Connecting the last 2 points of the seed pattern completes the classic labyrinth. Expanding or reducing the seed pattern results in labyrinths of different number of circuits. An 11-circuit labyrinth is created by adding an extra set of angles to the seed pattern. A 3-circuit labyrinth uses just the cross and dots of the seed pattern. As I mentioned, it's natural for symbols to evolve as the consciousness of humanity and its cultures evolve. As the labyrinth is a path, it follows that this evolution would include altering this path to explore the potential energies and impact on consciousness. I'm speaking strictly of changes that maintained labyrinth status and not changes that resulted in any type of maze. This is a good place to point out that if you want to learn all about labyrinths, check out Jeff Sayward. His work is the most thorough, thoughtful, and informative writings about labyrinths. I highly recommend his book, Labyrinths and Mazes, A Complete Guide to Magical Paths of the World. The information in the section about labyrinth classification is from his pamphlet, Labyrinth Typology, which can be found on his website, labyrinthos.net. Labyrinthos has an immense wealth of information and knowledge about labyrinths, including extensive photo archives, pamphlets about the history and types of labyrinths, and a fantastic annual publication, Cadroia, which he began in 1980. The Cadroia archive has PDFs of full issues going back to 2003 and a selection of articles going back to 1986. Just perusing the content of the site will broaden your horizons about labyrinths. It's a fantastic, informative site that I highly recommend. To bring some order to the variety of labyrinth designs, he proposes 4 major categories of labyrinth. He writes, "The earliest labyrinth symbols so far discovered are all of the same simple design, the classical type, which is found worldwide and remain popular to this day. During this 4,000-year history, the classical labyrinth has developed into a number of closely related forms, often in particular geographical regions, by means of simple adjustments to the seed pattern that lies at the heart of its construction. However, from time to time, major developments have taken place, resulting in quite different types of labyrinths being created, which have then themselves been further developed. I would propose that labyrinths can be classified into 4 major categories, although all of these have various subcategories, which can be further subdivided if one so wishes. These major categories can be classified as classical, Roman, medieval, and contemporary labyrinths. The original classical labyrinth form stood alone for thousands of years. Personally, I believe that, like the pyramids, this form is much older than commonly thought. The beauty and power of this primordial symbol remains one of the most popular labyrinth types to this day. If you understand the patriarchal nature of Roman society, then it makes absolute symbolic and energetic sense that their labyrinths would contain right angles. The Roman Empire was vast, so Roman labyrinths are located in many cultures that were once part of that empire. In labyrinth typology, Jeff Sayward writes, while the classical labyrinth was known throughout the Roman Empire, the popular use of the labyrinth as a design element in mosaic flooring resulted in a number of developments, all classifiable as Roman varieties. While rarely encountered amongst the examples since these times, these labyrinths are of considerable interest as they represent the first real attempts to create different forms of the genre and the first major changes to a symbol that had already been in circulation for some 2,000 years. Researchers have attempted various classifications of these Roman designs, usually based on mathematical or geometrical properties, but basically the majority of the 60 or so Roman mosaic labyrinths documented or preserved can be designated as meander, serpentine, or spiral types, with just a few complex designs falling outside of this simple system. The medieval labyrinth is a very well-known pattern, particularly as this is the type of labyrinth in Chartres Cathedral, possibly the most known and recognizable labyrinth in the world. This pattern is often referred to as the Chartres design, but the design was actually in use prior to being utilized in Chartres Cathedral. Contemporary labyrinths are the result of the bold and beautiful exploration of the labyrinth path. A great place to see some examples of current contemporary labyrinths is in the Discover Labyrinths Facebook page. There are many variations on the medieval design. Here are just a few. Here's a fascinating example of a contemporary labyrinth. Here's a classical variant called the Baltic type. Notice entering the labyrinth from the left takes you to the center where a quick whirlabout takes you swiftly out on the right for one continuous path in and out of the labyrinth. Based on a threefold seed pattern resulting in a spiral in the center, this unusual development is found primarily in India. The name Chakravayu comes from a magical troop formation from a battle recounted in the Mahabharata. This distinctive pattern is found in Arizona and New Mexico on basketry, jewelry, and other craft work. It was first developed around 1915 and remains popular. So named for the swastika pattern at the center of the labyrinth, swastika labyrinths are found in India and occasionally in Southeast Asia. They are found in Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, and Muslim temples, and even sometimes as graffiti. Labyrinth designer Ronald Esquivel dives deeply into the impact of sacred geometry on the energy of the labyrinth. His fantastic book, Labyrinth Design and the Energy of Its Geometry, thoroughly explores a wide variety of geometric labyrinth designs. He uses a 4-part formula to describe the labyrinth experience that includes the energy of form based on the overall shape of the labyrinth, the energy of number, along with the following 3 design elements of a labyrinth: the number of centers, represented by the letter C, the number of partitions, represented by the letter P, and the number of layers represented by the letter L. He combines number, the three elements, and form to create a descriptive formula of a labyrinth. This classical labyrinth, for example, is one center, one partition, 8 layers, with an egg form, resulting in the following assessment. The classical labyrinth offers a life-giving opportunity if I can vibrate at a high frequency and open up to connecting with essence. Chart Labyrinth offers a meditative opportunity to turn to and experience divinity as I submit my earthly requests, intending to land a solution and/or a deep connection. How beautiful is that? Here's another example from his book. His book is actually free with Kindle Unlimited, and the digital copy is only $3 on Amazon. I highly recommend. I went through that section a bit quickly because there's just a lot of information involved, which he covers in a 90-minute video, which I will link to in the description. The labyrinth is a womb of sacred energy. The sacred geometry of its shape and form is invigorating and connects us with the divine. That may be sacred feminine, sacred masculine, the energies of the earth, the higher self, God, your guides, or whomever or whatever your soul reaches out to. A primary energetic form within a labyrinth is the meander. To meander is to wander in winding, roundabout fashion. Even though these Greek meanders are made with right angles, they still represent the waveform. In nature, the conscious interaction of a river with the land is called a meander. Here, the waveform is more apparent. Here you can see how a double meander can be stretched into a 7-circuit labyrinth. Another energetic form of the labyrinth is the spiral. With or without meanders, the path to the center of the labyrinth is ultimately a spiral. Spirals and waves are different perspective iterations of the same energetic form. The reason for explaining the connection of spiral and meander to the waveform is that the waveform is the primordial energetic signature of wisdom. Dragons and serpents are connected to wisdom because they are iterations of the waveform. The serpent of wisdom does not actually refer to a literal serpent, but the waveform itself, because the waveform is the energetic form of wisdom consciousness. Any connection we make to the waveform is a connection to wisdom. Creating these forms in the labyrinth makes the labyrinth a portal to wisdom.
Every scientist who looks deeply into the universe, and every mystic who looks deeply within the self, eventually comes face to face with the same thing: the primordial spiral.
I think that all labyrinths really are partaking of the spiral archetype. We want to look back at our primal mind, what really grabbed people's attention thousands and thousands of years ago and still does. You know, it's kind of the fact that we are born and we're going to die. And I think the spiral has been a basic symbol. I think it's archetypal because it represents both evolution and involution. It represents being born. The labyrinth gives birth to us. And so when we walk into a labyrinth, it's sort of our death. We're walking back to our source.
Referring to the labyrinth as a proxy cosmos is a brilliant summation of its energetic and spiritual power. I hope this video inspires you to become a labyrinth and explore the cosmology of the labyrinth. Next are clips of Robert Ferre talking about the sacred geometry of the labyrinth and Richard Feather Anderson talking about the life-giving force of the labyrinth.
The sacred geometry says that you take sort of undifferentiated energy, and by forming it in certain patterns, you get material creation, you get things, you know, that you can see and touch and feel. So it organizes energy in a way that becomes useful to us. And the labyrinth does the same thing. It's always been an amazement to me to go out into a park where there was nothing to put a labyrinth there. People walk around on the same ground they were walking around before as a park, but now in a particular pattern, and all kinds of wonderful things happen to them. And in both directions, and also happens to the earth. It's organizing the energy that's available to all of us from ourselves and from the earth in a way that it becomes useful to us.
Another one of the very common experiences that people report walking the labyrinths is that they come out much more alive. And I started looking at the pattern that the people were creating when they were walking the labyrinth. And those patterns turn out to be the same patterns that are in nature that allows life to do everything that it does to create, sustain, and support life. And some of those patterns are even visible when you look at the labyrinths, because all the labyrinths are based on a meander pattern. And when you walk the labyrinth, you're going clockwise, and then you go around a corner and you go counterclockwise, and you go back and forth, clockwise, counterclockwise, left and right turns. It's a basic meander pattern, just like you find in rivers. And the same thing happens to flowing water going through the meander and the spiraling eddies and all the various patterns in water. Those are credited with filtering, oxygenating, purifying, and recharging the water so that it's really living water. When we walk a labyrinth, we are being guided to dance in the same way that water dances flowing off the land in the streams. So, as far as I'm concerned, when you walk a labyrinth, you are being taken through these extremely basic patterns that support life. And so they vitalize you. But not only is that going on, you are being taught or shown what those patterns are. Not through your mind, but through the movement of your body. It's like kinesthetic experience.
The symbol of the labyrinth has great impact on consciousness. Any interaction with this symbol will have an effect on you, whether actually walking a labyrinth or simply observing the symbol. The use of labyrinths in therapy continues to increase. Some therapists have even made it the center of their practice. Practitioners often use various forms of ritual to enhance the labyrinth experience. Through Veriditas, one may even become a labyrinth facilitator. Lars Hallett is a labyrinth designer and builder, as well as a labyrinth facilitator. His website, discoverlabyrinths.com, has a fantastic photo library of labyrinths currently found all over the world. Here's a brief clip of Lars talking about being a labyrinth facilitator.
Hello, I'm Lars Hallett, and I'm a Veriditas-trained advanced labyrinth facilitator. People often ask me, well, what is a labyrinth facilitator? And first of all, it's someone who knows what a labyrinth is and can speak about it to a variety of audiences. Now, this can be a little bit tricky because the definition of a labyrinth is pretty slippery. It's more than just saying it's not a maze. Because what about spirals? What about labyrinths with two paths? Also, the origins of labyrinths are somewhat mysterious and varied. And then labyrinths can be used for a wide variety of applications. They can be used for prayer, meditation, problem solving, community building, healing, grief, personal transformation, among other things.
Popular use of labyrinths today is the handheld labyrinth that one walks with their finger. Finger walking a labyrinth is a simple and convenient way to connect with the energy and wisdom of the labyrinth. It's a powerful therapeutic tool for many. There's a great deal to share about labyrinths, but that's all I have for you in this presentation. I hope this has inspired you to explore further and dive deeper into the beautiful divine energy of the labyrinth. Here are the online labyrinth resources I've become familiar with and found useful. Feel free to add more in the comments. Labyrinthos.net is Jeff Sayward's site and is an incredible wealth of information about labyrinths and mazes, including extensive photo library of the world's ancient labyrinths. DiscoverLabyrinths.com is the site of labyrinth facilitator and designer Lars Hallett. There you will find an amazing extensive collection of pictures of current labyrinths all over the world. He also has a YouTube channel of the same name. Veritas.org is a place you can become a certified Labyrinth facilitator and find out about Labyrinth events. Use labyrinthlocator.org to find a labyrinth near you or where you're traveling. Let's close this presentation with a virtual labyrinth walk courtesy of Paths of Peace at pathsofpeace.com.